there's an enormous benefit to novelty. And novelty can be new experiences, new sounds, new places, new people, new languages, even new smells, not anything. So we need to be constantly giving our brains new information, new stimulus. And that's what causes neurogenesis. That's how we make new pathways in the brain. If you're not doing that, you are self-fossilizing. You are
I love that.
You've decided, to just say, okay, this is, where I'm going to be. And it doesn't, there's no age associated with self-fossilization. I've seen plenty of 25-year-olds do it. And they're just like, whatever. I'm just going to watch football and drink beer and this is the way I am. Okay, fine. Have at it, buddy.
Hi, this is Diane Gilman. I am so proud to be speaking to you from my podcast, Too Young to Be Old. And today we have a rock star. Honestly, we have the Mick Jagger of super aging. I am not kidding you. I could not be more excited, and you will be too. And you know what? That is David Stewart. Last night, David sent me his SuperAger quiz. It was so much fun to take. But you know what? Rather than tell you all about that, let's have David do it. David, oh my gosh, the Ageist. You are the founder of probably the most successful organization that disseminates information out there about pro-aging on the planet. You have 250,000 followers, and honestly, rightfully so. It is the most beautiful website, the most informational and aspirational I have ever seen. Thank you for being here.
Could you be my agent?
Yeah.
It's really good.
I will be a cheerleader too. I'm making pom-poms. They're over in the corner right now.
Excellent.
Pom-poms for a 78-year-old cheerleader. Tell me a little bit about how you get from being a photographer for huge corporations like Coca-Cola to the founder and the face and the driving force behind the most successful pro-aging community on the planet.
It was completely unintentional, actually. As a photographer, what you do is you observe and record. That's your job, right? You observe, you record. So you get kind of good at that. And then what I noticed was when I was in my mid-50s that all the stuff around people my age or older was that we had some huge problem that needed to be solved. I didn't really feel like a problem. And what I was seeing out there was that we were increasingly medicalized and therefore infantilized, and told that we couldn't do anything, that we were essentially handicapped in some way. And I thought, well, I'm just not down with that. So let's see what's really going on here. And I noticed the enormous disconnect between the amount of communication resources expended to communicate with people like us and the consumer spending. So there was just this, we are the biggest, most powerful consumer group on the planet. And we were being talked to like we were children. And I thought, well, this is dumb. Why is everybody talking to 20-year-olds? They're on their parents' phone contracts. Like they don't really, they live at home. Okay. I mean, I don't have anything against them, but it's like, why is all this directed this way? So it was a lot of investigation and video interviews and trying to understand what was different about us today than in the past. And then we started, that was about 9 years ago. And we started publishing a little newsletter, and it was really primitive, Diana. It was to 50 of our friends, and our grand ambition was that these 50 people would remain our friends. We sent them this thing, and they did. So now we've got this other thing going on. Now it's a much larger thing and
huge,
and it's wonderful. And I think one of the reasons that people are attracted to what we do is we don't dumb it down. Like we don't assume like that at some age you just are unable to discern aesthetics, which is what ARP and pharma and all that stuff, like all of a sudden, like that stuff doesn't matter. Like, of course it does. Like, did we suddenly get dumb? No.
I'll tell you something from my point of view. And for 50 years, I was in fashion and I invented the baby boomer gene. It is so amazing to me that we are the spending power of America. The 20,000 of us turn 65 every day of the year. And there was not one fashion line devoted to what a woman goes through as her hormones change and her body changes. So you're completely pushed aside. You are not allowed, when you need the most help, to get the most help in fashion, because nothing is for you or fits you. And I just did a New York Fashion Week review, and it was like, are you kidding? See-through dresses with your nipples showing, dresses with your midriff cut out, trousers that are cut off to fit like underpants. What could possibly be wrong with this picture? I mean, here we have all this money to spend and we want to look good, and we have no place to spend it. And that is amazing to me. Very briefly, when I designed the baby boomer gene, and it really struck a chord in the nerves of the female viewership on tele-retail, the way Ageist has struck a nerve in 250,000 people. I went through the whole process. I became number one. And after X amount of years, 30 years on air, I sold the company. I wanted to do something new. I wanted an adventure. The minute I sold my name and the company, they hold a corporate meeting, and the first thing they say is, we don't want to dress fat old women anymore. We want the 30-year-old customer. Yeah. Okay. That sums it all up. We are so underestimated, and therefore we never get a chance to really perform at a top level.
Yeah, it's a certain form of it's complicated, and I understand the problem that the 30 and 35-year-old like marketing directors have, because age is it's tied, it's their parents, it's mortality, it's there's a lot. It's really complicated. It's complicated in a way that gender and race, sexual preference, things like that aren't nearly as complicated as this. It's those things are fairly straight ahead. I mean, they're thankfully they're a lot being better addressed these days, but they're a lot easier because you're not like, I'm a white guy. I'm never going to be a black woman. This is like never going to happen, right? Right? Never going to happen. But I was 20, I was 30, I was 40, now I'm 64. So that happens. So there's this change that happens over time to each one of us. And that, I think, is part of what's really hard. And for people especially in the fashion business, the beauty business, a lot of these things, it's really difficult for them. And so, one of the big things that we do is that we like all our corporate stuff is all NDA stuff, but I can tell you that very large German car manufacturer consults with us about customer experience in cars. The world's largest sneaker manufacturer, we make content for them. We consult with them about how to make shoes and stuff, and how to position things, because it's not like we're like super smart. It's just that we're able to communicate in a way, and we understand aspirational, inspirational, and attainable within this age group in a way that they don't. So for younger people, often what happens is they treat us, as I said in the beginning, as sort of a problem in need of a solution, and they're looking at it from a handicap point of view rather than an aspirational or inspirational point of view. So it's hard for them. They have no problem with LeBron as an unattainable inspiration to sell sneakers, but if you put somebody in our age group there, their brains just go haywire. It's really hard for them. So that we help them out with that.
Nobody wants to grow old. That's why. I will tell you that one of my favorite sayings is from the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards, who says, life's a funny thing. Nobody wants to grow old, but nobody wants to die young. And it's so much the truth. But I'm going to ask you a question. You have coined the term SuperAger. What is? I hope I'm a SuperAger.
You are. Well, I think it's just we trademarked a sort of a system to help people. So the SuperAge system is like super simple. This is nothing novel. It's just like, what are you eating? How are you moving? How are you sleeping? How are you dealing with your stress? And what's your sense of connection to your purpose in your community? So, because people get all twisted up in all this sort of exotics or the nonsense you read in the New York Times every week about whatever, and people end up being paralyzed. So I just say just keep it really simple. Just like deal with that. And then by super aging, what I mean is people who want to be the best versions of themselves as they go forward every day. And so bringing the version of yourself that you are today, like I'm not the version myself as I was at 20, that's okay. But I can be the best version of David at 64. You can be the best version of Diane today. Now, that's a certain worldview. And some people don't ascribe to that. And that's fine. You can do, I don't tell people how to live. You can live however you want. But if you want to do this, if you want to live in this way, that's what we mean by super aging.
So last night, I'm just cruising along, looking at Netflix, and then suddenly, oh my God, David Stewart sent me this test. I have to take this test. Okay, well, the test was pretty great. And it was your SuperAger test.
Yeah.
And of course, when I asked you about my results today, the first thing I wanted to hear was, oh, Diane, you were in the group that was the best. And then you say to me, but there is no best.
There is no best. And that's sort of the reason why we do this. So I really like animals. So we sort of name the categories animals. You're an owl. So an owl is someone who's really surveys the whole landscape. They read the science. They pick up on whatever they can do to bring into their lives. They're really knowledge intensive. Now, that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's the reason we did this is because sometimes people feel this sense of confusion or even shame. They'll say to me, oh, I think I should be doing this or should be doing that. And it's like, no, like, just tell me what's your worldview. So let's align your ambitions for what you want to do with the things that are appropriate for you to do. So someone who's an owl, I may, like, if you're talking to me, I'll say, hey, I just read this amazing thing I actually interviewed a guy yesterday about the intersection of cognitive ability and olfactory senses. So that's like super interesting. Okay, I'll send that to Diane. But I'm not going to send that to everybody, because if you send that to some people, their eyes are just going to glaze over. They're like, what are you sending me? So it's not right for them. And we're all different. And I think that so much of this sort of like, the heroes of podcasting out there, what I call well-ertainment, people who are like, oh, you must do this or you're going to die tomorrow. Well, no. Let's just like align these things with who you are and where you're at. And it's not a matter of right or wrong.
It was so accurate to my personality, because it said that the owl always wants to be the best self they can be. And that was so weird, because I was just on another podcast this week saying my entire point is not to go back and be a 20-year-old or a 40-year-old or even a 60-year-old again, but be the very best I can be in the moment. So that test just nailed it for me. But then I gave it to my social media manager, who said, oh, I know I'm going to be an owl too. And then she came back to me and said, oh, I'm a fox.
But foxes are fine. Fox is an awesome thing. Foxes, owls, dolphins, like, they're all awesome. There's nothing wrong with any of them. And that's sort of what we wanted to like communicate, was that whatever you are is awesome. it's just a matter of us saying like, okay, if you have this point of view, this information might be good for you. I'm not going to overwhelm you with something that's not right for you.
And I loved it because as a bird, I have an overview.
Yes, exactly.
I can go way above the situation and kind of see it all. Now, what are you going to do with that information? And I think everybody is going to have a lot. And the quiz is really easy, which I appreciated at that time of night. And then do you start disseminating, as you said, information that the owl might be interested in?
Exactly.
Or the fox?
Yes.
Or the dolphin? Okay.
So what'll happen is you will get a couple of tips directly into your email, and then the newsletter going forward. Every week in the newsletter, we have like a tip, and it's sort of a generic tip. But what's going to happen is you're going to start to see all of our communications. The profiles they'll have like a little animal on it. And it's like, this person is a whatever. The tip will be like, okay, for you owls, hey, here's this like awesome new science. You got to check this out. For you dolphins, here's a tip for you. This is like more appropriate for you. So we make tribes. And we all belong to different tribes. There's not like, it's like football teams, right? There's no good or bad, like whatever. It's just like they're just different, right? Well, they could be depending on where you live.
There's a little bit of competition. The one thing that really set me off was I use, and I was just doing a tip for Instagram this week on 3 things I do for my skin, because everybody's always asking me, but they're from the inside out. And one of them was using a handheld red laser. So one of the questions you ask is about, do you use the following a bariatric chamber, kind of like Michael Jackson, red laser? And I immediately looked those up, and it's like, oh, red laser. It's not just a little handheld thing. It's like a tanning bed, but it's all red. And immediately I'm on Google. Where can I find an oxygen bariatric chamber? I'm going to try it immediately.
These are I had knee surgery about 2 weeks ago, and so my doc gave me a whole protocol for recovery, and so the hyperbaric oxygen therapy is one of them. So I go to an HBOT tank. I have to do 10 sessions, and you just sort of lay in this tank for an hour and a half. But it's really dramatically increases the rate of healing.
Wow.
The red light is also, if you get the right kind, is really beneficial for your mitochondria. But all of these things, again, Diane, they're sort of like they're on the exotic edge. Like you got to get those big 5 things done first. Like don't talk. People are like, well, what's the pill? What's the this? What's that? And it's like, are you sleeping?
What's the big 5? What's the big 5?
Yeah. So the big 5 are really simple. It's like, are you sleeping? If you're not sleeping, figure it out. Like you got to go to sleep, or none of this is going to work. What are you eating? Let's get that clear. What's your exercise program? What's your movement? You got to move your body. I know it's harder than swallowing a pill, but that's what you got to do. Find out do you have a program to de-stress? Stress is the most corrosive thing you can for any of your genes, any of your cells. You need to reduce your stress. What are you doing about it? And then what's your sense of connection in the world? Do you have a spiritual connection? Are you connected to a community? What is your sense of purpose? These sort of things. So those are sort of the 5 things that, like, that's the big stuff. That's like 97% of it. And the rest of it out here, we can make improvement on the edges. But if you're not doing that stuff, HBOT and red light and lasers and all that other stuff, you're just not going to do anything.
It's hilarious. So the minute I saw it, and I had to say, no, I'm not doing that. But I thought, I've got to do this immediately. Well, you know what? If your newsletter which really nailed that whole thing of being an owl really nailed my personality. But if your newsletter opened up new avenues of curiosity for me, that would be huge, because what I see, and I belong to a couple of pretty prestigious women's clubs in New York, but I find that most of these women, God bless them, have lived a really prescribed life. They married a guy 10, 15 years older than them, a good provider, da-da-da-da. And that now they spend this part of their life taking care of that man, never initiating anything new, no new horizons, just looking to the past, which was much easier and more pleasurable than the future. And I'm in a totally different category. I'm starting a new adventure, a whole new career. I'm loving it. I'm meeting tons of people, lots of interesting information. So in a way, I'm connected to a community, but I'm not sure I'm connected to the right community. Let me put it that way.
Well, you're probably a role model for them, Diane. Like, people like us are important out in the world. They see you and they're like, oh, that's interesting. And it impacts people. Like, we're seen. That's one of the other delusions of age, that we're invisible. We're not. People see us. They may not see us the way they saw us 20 or 30 years ago, but they still see us. And so we can, by example, we impact people.
That was important to me. That was a point of the podcast. Too Young to Be Old is all about what's in your head. And I believe that I will always be too young to be old. And I think that the fact that I became a widow very early in life, before I was 50, and never decided to just zoom into my career and really get that going and the grief took a long time to get over. I avoided what is going on now, which is that most of the people I'm associated with, women, are dealing with really difficult home situations. So for that audience that doesn't see their future as reinvention, what would you say to them? Because as a SuperAger, that is your purpose, I think, is to help clarify the positivity aging can represent.
Well, I think you brought up a couple of things here. I think the most important thing for a caregiver is, like what they tell you on the airplane, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then put it on the other person. If you're not taking care of yourself, remember, this whole thing sits on you. You fall apart, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
So you need to really take care of yourself. I think the other thing is this idea of novelty. There's an enormous benefit to novelty. And novelty can be new experiences, new sounds, new places, new people, new languages, even new smells, not anything. So we need to be constantly giving our brains new information, new stimulus. And that's what causes neurogenesis. That's how we make new pathways in the brain. If you're not doing that, you are self-fossilizing. You are. I
love that.
You've decided, to just say, okay, this is, where I'm going to be. And it doesn't, there's no age associated with self-fossilization. I've seen plenty of 25-year-olds do it. And they're just like, whatever. I'm just going to watch football and drink beer and this is the way I am. Okay, fine. Have at it, buddy. But if you want to continue to have this vivid, vital, sort of forward-looking outlook on life, there are two kinds of stress, Diane. There's chronic stress, bad, really bad. Acute stress, good. So acute stress is what you get from exercise. Exercise is hard. We stress our bodies. You walk into a party, nobody knows you, you're afraid. That's a momentary acute stress. What you've done is you're stretching yourself to do something new. You walk into, you decide you're going to learn Mandarin. Well, that's really hard. That's stressful, but that's great. Learning to play a musical instrument, that's great. It's really hard, but that's great. we need constant new stimulation. So I tell people to seek out novelty. Make the word yes one of the main words in your vocabulary. Somebody invites you, well, we're going to go bowling. I hate bowling. Whatever. Just say yes. Go.
Well, I hate tech, and yet here
Right.
I am with my own podcast.
Right.
Why in the world did I do that? I was retired for approximately 4.5 weeks. I saw retirement as this long, dark, endless tunnel. And I thought, couldn't I use my skills from being on TV for 30 years on tele-retailing? And lo and behold, I got offered my own podcast within 5 weeks of retirement. So retirement became reinvention.
Mm-hmm.
And it has done so much for me. And, I was in a situation business-wise that was extremely agitating and toxic. And people actually tell me I look like I don't even look like the old me anymore because I shed so much of that. So honestly, I would say to anybody out there that is hesitating, yeah, maybe you don't want to tie a rope around your waist and jump off the Empire State Building like I did and hope the bungee cord sticks. But I think that with people like you, David, and hopefully me, we're going to build a new perception of what aging is as people that are wanted. We want the contribution. We're set up to give it. We just need the right set of circumstances. I didn't want to be in a TV studio till 3 a.m. and then go and get 3 hours of sleep and be back for an 8 a.m. show. That was not age appropriate for me anymore. So I had to find something that was so much better suited to me. And that would be the advice I would give.
Yeah. And I think, the retirement thing is a little tricky. The stats on the quickest way to die is to retire.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you can just look that up. And, I think retirement can be really disorienting for people. They lose their sense of camaraderie with their workers, their sense of purpose. Why are they getting out of bed in the morning?
Get in your pajamas for 3 days in a row.
But not everyone. I mean, for some people, it's awesome. They have great time. And I think, again, we're all individual and we're all different. We have different needs and wants. And to these sort of like blanket, like, everybody needs to eat whatever, or everybody needs to do this. This doesn't make any sense. We grew up. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, which was the time of individuality and, doing what's right for you and sort of breaking out of the conformity of the 40s and 50s. And I think that that's still the thing, like to just understand that, I started this thing, like what I do, people think I'm nuts. Like what, like you started this thing at like 56 or whatever, but I mean, my friend Alan Petrikoff is on his third fund, and he started that at 86. I think he's 89 now.
Wow.
So, I think that, but it's different things for different people, and understanding what works for you to really get a grasp on that. And if you find yourself in a place that it's not working, so you're feeling depressed, you're feeling like I'm not worthy, what should I do? Change it. Yeah. Like you have agency in the situation here. You can, maybe you don't want to work, but you can volunteer. It's very, very important. There's only I don't have much in common with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but we both believe something very strongly. That is, the point of all this is being useful. We need to be useful.
Totally. And I'll tell you what, I call this the age of customization. You are in charge of customizing your life to fit your limits and your needs. And I can still reach a huge audience, which is so important for me, for women over 55. But I can do it on my terms. So it makes it much more effective for myself. And the same thing, I customize my health. These doctors all want you to take all these pills. They're almost disappointed if you don't take them. But I just thought, couldn't I get a grip on my cholesterol and my high blood pressure myself? And I did it in 6 months. And I swear to you, the doctor acted devastated that she had to withdraw all the pharmaceuticals. But in closing, and this has definitely been probably one of my very favorite podcasts I've done. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said yes. What would you say in closing to an audience that's younger? Because we find that about 50% minimum of our audience is 30 to 55. And they just want to know, is it really that dismal, or is there a way to figure this out? What would you say to that audience in closing remarks, David Stewart?
Accept your grim reality. It's bad. It's really bad. I think that, half of my audience is under 52. And it's the same thing. I think that they look to us for inspiration. They look to us for we have these people that are like in their 30s and they're like, well, how do we get to be like you guys? Because you guys are cool. Like, how do we do that? And it's not that hard. Like, understand that if you're 30 now, your chances of living to, 100 are pretty high. And your chances of being healthy for the vast majority of that are pretty high. So, I think one of the advantages younger people have is the whole age slinky has gotten pulled apart. It's longer now. So the sort of critical decisions that you and I had to make when we were like 20 or 25, they don't have to make, because they're going to have multiple careers. They're going to do multiple things, and they don't need, no single one of these things is that big of a deal because you got much more runway. So it's like, it's okay, guys. You're going to be fine.
And it's not all I ever see on cable TV are people golfing. I hate golf. Cruising. I get seasick. And basically taking tons of drugs and hearing all the side effects, which are not exactly what I want to be filling my brain with. But everything around us has us convinced that that's old age. Well, you're looking at somebody here who follows almost an Oriental regime of diet as medicine. I take nothing beyond an Aleve or an aspirin. And I'm actually amazed at how much I am enjoying my new life, which I am carving out for myself. And part of that enjoyment is having David Stewart, the rock star of aging, on my podcast. What a pleasure. Anything you want to say in closing?
Go to ageist.com/quiz. Take the quiz. Find out what kind of animal you are.
It's so much fun.
And we'll send you stuff. Yeah. And if you're younger, remember the one thing that will impact your life going forward is how you're taking care of your body. That stuff counts. So good stuff pays dividends. Bad stuff, you're paying interest. So just think about that.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay.
I can't thank you enough. I could thank you from here to Mars and back again, but fantastic podcast, great information. And boy, we should all have your energy level. Bravo. Bravo, Stewart. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.